It's a pleasure to be here with you today, and thanks Stuart and team for putting together such a lovely event. No paper for me this morning. Millennials killing the paper industry. So today I'm here to talk about marketing trends. These are trends that we're picking up from the brands that work with us at LinkedIn, the advertisers that are running activity on our platform. And these are very high-level trends. They're ideas. Hopefully they'll be thought-provoking and you'll take something away back to your business. They're not tactical. They're not going to go into the nitty-gritty of, why you should be doing content marketing lists or anything like that. Though the latest on that, apparently, is the rule of threes. People were reducing their content into 3 things. Apparently, there's been research to show that that's the optimal pattern that our brains really like. For example, rock, paper, scissors, or location, 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 or ready, set, bake. People like that. So today, we're not going to be doing that. We're going to be doing 4 trends that I've chosen. And no one's going to get fired because of this. This is actually on purpose because we like our trends to be contrarian. We don't like them to be what everyone agrees on. So we also like a matrix. So if we think about ideas, they can be either right or wrong. Time will tell. And they can be either consensus or contrarian. So consensus, everyone likes it. Everyone agrees with it. Everyone is doing it. Contrarian, they go a little bit against the grain. They're not what everyone is doing. So we are ignoring everything that we think is the wrong idea because no one wants to be doing that. We're also ignoring the things that are right but consensus because everyone's already doing it. We think would be a waste of time to be discussing that. What we're focusing on these trends are the trends that are right and contrarian. So are the things that we believe in and we see brands doing, but not everyone else is doing yet. We also think those trends are actionable today. These are not trends for 5, 10 years in the future. These are not technologies that some brands are testing, other brands aren't. These are things that we're seeing brands do today successfully, but just not everyone. Some of the brands, not everyone. So let's jump right into it. The first trend is the death of personas. Quite dramatic. Good to start with the death. This is a very sad statistic for someone who comes from a marketing background like myself, is that only 3% of people believe that the advertising that they're seeing is relevant to them. And it's quite shocking in this day and age where we have so much data. We talked about all this customer data that we have. How we're not managing to make marketing relevant to people is quite depressing. So if we look at a good example of very well done customer centricity, I'll give the example of Netflix, and they come up a lot because they're doing very nice things a lot. But Netflix, the homepage of Netflix, there are no 2 equal homepages when you look at Netflix. My homepage is going to be different than Stuart's, and it's going to be different than yours. Everyone has their own unique homepage because it's 100% based on what you watch, what you like, what you don't like. So that is a great example of being very, very customer-centric and presenting to people exactly the things that they want to see. But it goes a step further. So every little detail is informed by data. For example, if I'm someone who historically watches a lot of romantic comedies, when they show me the thumbnail for Good Will Hunting, they're going to show me an image of Matt Damon and Minnie Driver kind of sharing an intimate moment, because that's going to resonate with me according to the data, all the data that they have. But if I'm someone who likes comedy and watches a lot of Arrested Development and Zoolander, they're going to show me a different image. They're going to show me an image of Robin Williams, and they're going to appeal a little bit more to the comedic side of the movie. So the way they present their product here, the product is the content, is going to be different depending on who I am as a customer, is 100% informed by what I've told them so far that I like, that I care about, the things that I want to see. Conversely, when we're talking to brands, we still see a lot of guesswork happening when they're building campaigns and when they're doing their marketing activity. We're still seeing people, when they look at a product, thinking, about the customer journey. We work with a lot of B2B brands who have a very long sales cycle, and they'll think about, oh, maybe someone from research and then someone from sales and someone from procurement are going to kind of be in there as decision makers. So let's communicate to them because they're going to be the ones who are going to be deciding. But there might be someone else in here that they're not thinking about and who is actually going to be key in that decision, and they're missing communicating with them because of this. So how are we working with brands to address this? There's this website demographics pixel. It's free. Anyone can have access to it. This isn't that you can put on your website and layer LinkedIn data on top of all the web visitors that you have. So out of all of your visitors, let's say 60% of them have LinkedIn profiles. Using this pixel, you can see what kind of industries they come from, or what kind of job titles they have, or what kind of companies they work at, what kind of size of the companies they work in. And we've seen brands use that information to inform how they're going to build a website and how they're going to organize things. So there was this telco company who had their whole website organized by product. And after using our pixel, they saw that people from SMB companies were clicking more on certain products and people from enterprise on other products. So they flipped this on this head and decided to have the website by industry, by kind of company size. So they'll ask you, are you SMB, are you enterprise? And based on that decision, they would show you a different experience. So they're using real-time data to inform that, the way their website is going to appear. The second trend I want to talk about is the originality delusion. And I worked in agencies before, and this is something that comes up a lot. I've seen this in real life many times, is this idea of, everything has to be 100% new, never seen before, never done before, never heard before. There's this obsession with newness, but new isn't always what people want. I'll give the example of Tropicana. It's an American brand. They decided to completely redo their packaging. They decided it was time, so they hired this creative agency. If I recall correctly, it was Arnell. Spoiler alert, they're no longer in business. They said, just run with it. Let's do something new. Let's just completely revamp it. And they came up with this, which personally I think it's quite a nice packaging. They decided they wanted to showcase the product a little bit more, so they've got the 3D glass there of orange juice, and they just changed everything. And what happened is after 2 months, their sales were down 20%. The whole endeavor cost them $50 million in the end of the day. So it was pretty tragic, because what happened is that they took away the familiarity. Suddenly people were going to the shelves to get their orange juice, and they couldn't recognize it anymore. And instead of being something automatic, one of those automated brain decisions that you just pick the thing that you know, suddenly you're looking at it and you're like, is it still the same product? And while I'm thinking about it, oh, maybe I should try this other one that I've never done before. So they took that away, and it was quite dramatic for them. But taking this back to the marketing scene, this research by The Drum that shows that only 1 in 5 campaigns outperform the old ones. So, and we see this with brands that work with us. Some brands were always, starting and stopping and creating new campaigns and doing different things, don't tend to perform as well as the brands who have an overarching strategy that's always on and spans sometimes a year. And they can build on top of the things that are working, and then they can pull back on the things that are not working, but it's very iterative. But there's always this overarching strategy that's always there. And because we have a lot of people doing content marketing on LinkedIn, we've done a research with Edelman, where we asked CXOs what do they want from thought leadership. All the brands want to communicate with the CSOs, and that's the level they want to talk to. So we asked them, what do you want to see? And they said that they want to see content that's relevant to them, not necessarily original, by 2 times more. So they really care about seeing the things that address the problems and the topics that they care about and that brings value to them, not necessarily hear something new just for the sake of newness. So going back to the Tropicana example, and I want to quote Raymond Louis. He's a designer from the Mad Men era. He designed the logo for Shell. And he used to say, don't sell original, sell Maya. What's Maya? It's most advanced, yet acceptable. His idea was that we should push boundaries, but only as far as people are willing to accept it. So we should be careful not to push it too far, otherwise you lose people in the process. This is what happened with Tropicana. So after the disaster, they took a step back and they repackaged things again. They brought back the brand that people could recognize, but they also made some adjustments to, being able to show the product like they wanted. So they brought back familiarity, but they pushed boundaries only far enough as people were willing to accept at that stage. Taking this back again to content and marketing, for example, Marketo has a guide that they publish. It's called the Definitive Guide to Lead Generation. It's been their biggest source of ROI for the last 8 years. Should they do something new, like just 'cause? Probably not. They keep on building on top of this, and they keep doing this again and again and again in different ways because they know it works. It's time tested. People want to read about this. Right. Next one, blockbuster marketing, probably my favorite out of all of these. Real-time marketing, worst idea we've ever had. Absolutely worst idea we've ever had. This is the example of Oreo a couple of years ago in the Super Bowl when the lights went out and they were out of energy. They had to stop the game, and people took it to social media to talk about it because it's something so out of the ordinary and unique. And what Oreo did is that they tweeted about it. They said, "You can still dunk in the dark." And this was lauded by our industry, like the most brilliant thing that was ever done. And we talked about this for years at end. But is it repeatable? Is it something that they can monetize over time? Probably not. It's very stuck in a place and time. It's only relevant at that specific moment. And it actually only had 6,000 likes. So it wasn't really that big, but the next day, all the industry publications were saying how Oreo won the Super Bowl. It's just not repeatable. And they had a war room of 15 people, creative designers, copywriters, ready to just jump on something that was happening. And luckily the lights went out, and that's how they came up with this. But it just became a sensation in the industry. But did it result in more people buying Oreos? Probably not. It's hard to tell, but probably not. But brands got so taken by this that they've decided to go ahead and just have war rooms and start creating, publishing content in real time and addressing things as they're happening. There's this example of Chase, who's got a 10-person newsroom and is always pushing news and content from their website. And that's very similar to the newspaper model. But what we're seeing with the newspaper model is that it's in decline. People don't want to consume content this way anymore in the majority of the time. Now, taking it back to Netflix, once again, they invest in all-time content, is how they call it. You won't be able to see the news, you won't be able to see the football on Netflix because it's not relevant tomorrow. If I'm watching, the Arsenal game in the weekend, that's great, but if I didn't watch it, I don't want to watch it today. It's already happened. So what they do is they invest in content that people can consume at any time. And the other smart thing that they're doing about this is that they're not coming up with original content either. All these characters that they have from their Netflix originals are very old, actually. They're all time-tested characters from the comic books that they know are going to resonate with people, even if the newer generations don't realize that. They've been around for a while, and they know it works. And that model is actually quite successful. It's the Hollywood model, and Disney is the most prolific one when it comes to creating franchises. Between Marvel and Pixar and Star Wars, they really perfected that formula where you find something that works and then you keep building on it. You keep pushing content that's within that same formula, but always new, always different. Every year, I know I'm going to get a new Star Wars movie, and they're going to break it down and have merchandising on top of it and have different things on top of it. But it's all going to be inside a universe that they know that people can resonate with, people are familiar with, and they want to see more of it. So they're doing the opposite of the newspaper model, actually. They're telling fewer stories. They're focusing on telling less stories, but focus on the universes that are already established. And if you look as well, the latest releases they've had in the last 2 years, the majority of them are older stories, are stories that we've heard before. It's just updates on it. It's just different takes on it. They have a few new stories there as well. They're basically the seeds of the future franchises that if it works well, they'll do more of it. If it doesn't, they'll just drop it. But the majority of their activity is on things that they're established, that they know they work. This works as well for marketing. So you've got Mary Meeker's trends. She releases them every year. And we know exactly what to expect because they're always the same format. This is our franchise. Salesforce has a similar format as well. The state of is their franchise. They have got the state of analytics, the state of sales, the state of service. They just changed the vertical, but the formula is there and it's recognizable. Whenever I go see one of their reports, I know what I'm going to expect, what's going to be in there. And we do it too. We've got the Sophisticated Marketer's Guide. So we put together this big piece of content, and then we broke it down into a webinar. We broke it down into a podcast and a blog post and an infographic and et cetera, et cetera. So there's this one overarching franchise, and then we break them down into all the possible channels that we can monetize them through, and then we just go with it. And even this presentation is becoming a franchise as well. We've been doing it for the last 3 years. We just update the trends every year and every so often. Right. The last thing I want to talk about today is you are what you signal. So if we ask ourselves this question, I think the answer is should be quite straightforward. We could all agree that's probably the one here that looks like it's on an airport with very high quality images. So going back to advertising theory and the theory of signaling, it's to do not so much with the message itself, but also with the medium, and it's hard to separate the two. So regardless of what your brand is trying to say, you can't ignore where they're saying it. People, when they're listening to your message, they're going to be listening to everything that's around that message as well, not just the message itself. So if I see a brand advertising on the most expensive places all over town, I unconsciously am going to think, wow, they must be doing really well, or they must have a very quality product. And Apple understands that really well. They buy premium spaces for 5 years at a time. They don't even know what they're going to be putting there, but they know they want to be there because they don't want to be a tech brand. They want to be a luxury brand. That's why they have their stores on the Fifth Avenue and next to Prada and next to Dior and Chanel, because that's how they're positioning themselves. And they know that if their advertisements are in a premium location, that's going to convey that message just as well as the message itself. So they understand that quite well. But at the same time, it's quite funny how there's this focus on being everywhere, very cheap. I've had plenty of conversations around that with a very variety of people, because there's been, once upon a time in the beginning of digital advertising, we used to want to be in certain places, and we used to buy certain areas of a website. And then suddenly, with all the data that we have and the ability of retargeting people all over the web, we started to care less about where we were and more about who was on the other side of the ad, who was looking at it, and you could follow them everywhere. But should you? Should your brand appear in every single site I'm visiting as a consumer? That's a question that we're seeing brands ask themselves more and more now. Less so about, do I want to talk to this person at every single point in time when they're browsing the internet, when they're watching cat videos, whenever? Or should I be conscious of where my brand is appearing and make sure I'm communicating in the channels where that's going to resonate better and more? So one example of this is Chase was advertising in over 400,000 websites. And that may seem like a shocking number, but it isn't. Tons of brands are doing this. And they decided to implement a whitelist. They decided to just have 5,000, which is still quite a lot, but it was human reviewed. They looked at those websites and decided we're either happy being associated with these places or we think they're contextually appropriate. So they ran with that, and they saw the same results, which is quite worrying. It goes to show that there was a lot of waste going on there. So this is definitely something that we're hearing more and more with the brands that we're working with. Suddenly the pendulum is swinging again, and they're worried about where they're appearing and what kind of message the place they're in, the environment, is conveying about their brand. Great. So how can you apply these trends today? Just to summarize, first of all, use your data to build dynamic personas. Most brands have a ton of data on their customers, and that should be informing how you're going to market with your marketing. Secondly, appreciate that sometimes old ideas are better than new ideas. Sometimes the things that you've done in the past have worked well, and you can still build on top of it. Develop repeatable franchises to break through the noise. There's so much content out there these days. There's more content out there than anyone can care to read. So to break through the noise, it's important to have something that's recognizable and that people can come back to and know what to expect. And lastly, if you care about your brand being premium, try and reach those people in premium contexts. Thank you.
One question that I had was, what kind of brands are you seeing that are doing great kind of adverts now over kind of social media? Any examples that stand out for you? And is there, we spoke about placement and content. Is one more important than the other, or are they kind of equally weighted?
Okay, so the first one, I'm probably not at liberty to name and shame brands and say who's doing the best things, but what I'll say specifically in content marketing, the brands that we're seeing winning are the ones who are focusing on bringing value to the customers. So they're not just making content about their products and about the things that they're doing. They're trying to find a subject that their readers want, their audience wants to read about, and they're trying to bring value to them. They're trying to help them somehow. And in the process, they become thought leaders. In the process, they become someone that people can trust. So we're seeing like financial brands talking about how to advance your career, for example, on LinkedIn. And it seems kind of disconnected in the sense that, you know, they're not selling anything here, but because they're bringing something to those people that they care about, suddenly they start to become thought leaders. Or, you know, IT companies talking about cloud computing, but not in the sense that of their own products and how they're solving those products, more broadly in the industry landscape. And if they talk about it often enough and long enough, people start to associate. So each brand needs to find what is their niche, where they can really be, you know, first to mind, and then build their content strategy around that. And to your question about placement and message, I think context plays a very big role in all of this. For example, I'll give the example of our display advertising. When we moved to programmatic, and you know, any brand could come and advertise on LinkedIn suddenly, we had to make some very strategic decisions to not allow a bunch of categories. Because, for example, I might be going on holidays in a month and I might want a new swimsuit, but I don't want to see it on LinkedIn because it just doesn't match with the experience I have over there. It's not the mindset I'm on. I want to read about work. I want to read about my career. I want to read about the things that matter to me. I don't want to see swimwear. So it matters where you are and the context around it.
Just a question about the hyper-personalization that you were talking about, for example, in Netflix. Is there not a danger that we're seeing too much hyper-personalization? So, for example, you know, a whole group of films or television shows are being suppressed for me on my Netflix page because I happen to like science fiction and rom-coms. Is there a danger with that happening too much that you're seeing?
Absolutely. I think if you rely on it too much, those things can happen. And the whole concept of echo chambers and, you know, being surrounded by the things that people think you should be listening and hearing is definitely a hot topic right now. And I'm not sure what is the answer as to how can we make it better. But what we're seeing is that the brands that are doing this and they're pursuing to put what's relevant to the person in front of them are doing better than the ones who are just, you know, guessing and kind of letting people find their way. So if you went to your Netflix and you just saw their entire catalog, it would be very overwhelming. But as you know, there's a point for machine learning as well. If you start searching outside of your sci-fi habits, hopefully it should be quick enough and learn quickly enough to start surfacing other things. But I definitely agree with your point, and I think it's a work in progress in the industry.